welcome to the Digital Media Academy Speaker Series for leading STEAM educators and school leaders. My name is Chris Bennett. I am so pleased to be hosting this series focused on the challenges facing K-12 school leaders in preparing young leaders for the fields of tomorrow. Today's session is titled Preparing K-12 Learners for the Future of Work, and I'm pleased to shortly introduce you to our guest, John Mitchell. Before I introduce John, I would like to introduce myself and share briefly about Digital Media Academy. My name is Chris Bennett. I'm a longtime video game designer and an affiliate at Stanford Graduate School of Education. I'm also the engagement specialist at Digital Media Academy. Now, Digital Media Academy was founded in 1999 on the campus of Stanford University, and our flagship program, Leading STEAM Schools in the World, is a membership program that offers a complete, ready-to-use solution for K-12 schools that combines comprehensive STEAM curriculum, tailored consultation, and a supportive global community that empowers educators to meet the demands of 21st century learners. This public speaker series is brought to you by the Digital Media Academy team and is available globally through the Leading STEAM Schools in the World community. So why are we here? This series aims to connect you with leading thinkers and change makers to unlock the tools and knowledge needed to lead K-12 education change. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We invite you to use the Q&A feature throughout the session, and we often have time at the end of the session to take some questions from you. We'll also be sharing the recording of the session with you in the next few days. Without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce you to John Mitchell, our guest for today's session. John is faculty director of the Hasso Plattner School of Design, also known as the Stanford D.school. John is also the Mary and Gordon Crary Family Professor, Professor of Computer Science, and by courtesy, Professor of Electrical Engineering and Professor of Education. He was previously Stanford Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning and Chair of the Computer Science Department. As co-director of the Lytics Lab, Carta Lab, and Pathways Lab, John has worked to improve educational outcomes through data-driven research and iterative design. I would like to invite John to join me on screen now. Hi, John. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, great to see you this morning.
So can you tell us a little bit about your journey? How do you find yourself where you are right now?
All right. Well, I've been a computer scientist for about, maybe 40 years, let's say. And I started out in computing. I just thought it was very cool to be able to tell a big machine to do kind of routine stuff rather than do it yourself. And I started in the era when a computer looked kind of like a laundromat. You know, a computer was many, many pieces and it took up a whole room, and there were spinning disks that looked like, a clothes dryer or something like that. And then obviously the field has evolved a great deal, and it's been a kind of fun thing to watch technology change and have different kinds of impact on people. I started out at kind of a theoretical end of computer science. You know, how do you reason about programs? How do you know what they're going to do? How do you prove something mathematically? And I got progressively more into experimentation and sort of balancing theory and practice. Around 2007, 2008, some students came up to me after class and said, could we have a platform, a web platform for asking questions outside of class, for getting course handouts if we miss class, just to kind of connect and ask questions and get answers? And I said, sure, let's find one. And I couldn't find anything at the time that really was suitable. So I decided, well, maybe we're not using technology in education as much as we could. Let me build this thing. And then, of course, being an academic and working at a college, I didn't really build it. What I did was post a note saying, hey, here's a project for students. Sign up for the summer and build this thing if you want. And I got 6 or 7 students who, Stanford computer science students are pretty good at building software. So they built this nice thing, and that turned into, in some sense, Coursera, and gave me this job as vice provost managing Stanford's side of the bunch of experiments on video and digital education. That sort of took me from being a computer scientist into being interested in education explicitly. And I think, why did that resonate with me? I think it comes back in some sense to my early educational history. I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, kind of a hippie, Wild West kind of cultural time. And I went to some high schools that had no grades and no formal classes. And I always kind of thought that education could be a little more flexible and a little more customizable and relate to people's individual goals a little better. So that's kind of the background in some sense for why I'm doing the set of things I'm doing now.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really fascinating. As we think about where we are right now in 2024, it seems like things are moving pretty quickly right now, technology-wise, culture-wise. How is the future of work changing right now due to advances in generative AI and other technology? And are these changes small or large ones, do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot happening, and so much is happening, nobody really knows where things are going to land. I think the big change that everyone has seen is the release of ChatGPT, the ability for all of us to go interact with what's called a large language model, to have a conversation with AI, feels totally different one from what we thought was possible just a couple of years ago. So that's been the watershed event. But there's a lot leading up to that, and there's going to be a lot of things that follow later. One term that you might have heard, some of you, is second machine age. That refers to the first machine age being machines that do physical stuff, dig ditches, power loom, things like that, steamboat. And the second machine age is digital stuff that does thinking for us. Another term is the third industrial revolution. These ideas have been around prior to the release of ChatGPT. So we've been on a long trend of automating more of the things that people do with digital technology that can think in some way. What ChatGPT and the recent emergence of more flexible AI that can talk and create pictures and things has, I think, raised much higher expectations. Now everybody thinks, oh, maybe AI can do this for me, maybe AI can do that for me. We don't really know which tasks will be done effectively and well by AI, and how people will try to manage this. But one way to think about it is everybody now gets an assistant to help them with their work. And so you can talk to AI the way you would talk to somebody who signed up to help you, ask it to do things. It can kind of do a moderately good job in some cases, but you have to check it and make sure that you like the work that the AI is doing for you. So I think we're going to need to develop, as humans, good judgment about what to ask for, and maybe even better skills on telling whether, for example, a draft of a paper is really good and how it needs to be improved, or how work partially done by machine, does it suit our goals? Is it doing what we want? And if not, how do we take it from pretty good to really the superb kind of work that most of us would like to do in our careers and in other activities?
So it's interesting. It makes me think that a lot of people talk about AI kind of being the switch. Up until 2022, it felt kind of useless, or 2023, and now it feels like it might take over and replace us. But what I'm hearing from you is much more of a hybrid approach, that as generative AI continues to improve in its potential capabilities, it still needs humans in the loop to ask the right questions, to make sure that the output that's coming out is effective and efficient. Where do you kind of see that putting humans, when you think about someone like, I have a middle schooler, and when they enter the workforce, let's say 10 years from now, do you think it'll be markedly different for them?
Well, the honest answer is we don't know, but I think it will be, and we don't know exactly how. I think there are some areas in which you can think of automation as kind of taking over in some sense. If you look at how the stock market works, there are automated algorithms that buy and sell stock, and that's a big factor that isn't as directly controlled by humans on a trade by trade basis. And so we live and work in an environment that feels different and is controlled differently. But in other kinds of activities and sort of choosing what we want and how to accomplish our goals. I think people will drive the use of technology, and technology will still be something we ask and we can disregard or make some judgment about. So I think everyone will have to kind of get comfortable with this. And I think it's important for as many of us as possible not to feel like we don't understand it in a way that leaves us powerless.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that kind of that take of kind of burying your head in the sand and saying, well, ChatGPT is just for kids to cheat on their exams. It's not worth the time for me as a school leader to spend time on it. Just doesn't seem like it's very tenable anymore.
Well, we might be surprised again. Something else might come out in a year or 2 years that's also similarly revolutionary. The technology will move forward. Many, many smart people are working hard. So it's hard for all of us to predict where that's going. But I think experimenting with this, spending a little bit of time, is useful so that you have your own personal sense of what AI can do. If you haven't used ChatGPT, you could have a little conversation with it. It's interesting to ask it about something you don't know anything about, and it sounds really good. And then you ask it about something that you know a lot about, like ask it about yourself or somebody you know well or somebody you read about, and see how inaccurate it is. And I think kind of getting calibrated. This isn't going to do everything for us all the time perfectly, but it's still a massively powerful new tool that will change the way most of us live, and so good to follow that and be informed if you can.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. How do you feel the science of learning is changing, and how do you think that those changes will affect K-12 STEAM schools?
So there are a couple of ways to think about that. One is kind of narrowly, what do people mean by the science of learning? There's a kind of very specific thread for people doing research in the area of starting with things like very specified learning goals for a course or for a curriculum. And the conventional, kind of view on that is the learning goals should be things that are testable. A student at the end of this class should be able to solve this kind of problem, with a pencil and paper or with a calculator or something like that. So I think that area is going to benefit directly from automation. We're getting more sophisticated ways of telling how well someone meets those kind of criteria. And I think AI and modern digital tools as they advance give us better ways to test our ways of teaching. Once you have replace a textbook, say, by a platform where students solve problems on that, you can watch the steps they go through, you can tune the problem so that it's more effective. We can kind of engineer in some iterative way using ideas from psychology, from past research in education and technology to kind of help students, say, learn high school chemistry more effectively, or even learn to write more effectively, because these AI models are pretty good at reading and responding to writing. So in the specific case of, I have a set of measurable goals, I want to help students reach a certain point with regard to those, that I think is going to get more scientific and more engineered with the help of technology and the move from paperwork to doing things on tablets or laptops and so on. There's also a kind of broader way of looking at this, like what are we aiming for in education? And I think there's been some important trends, past decade or even more around what are we trying to accomplish? Is it really the most important thing that someone learns their multiplication tables, or do we want them to feel confident in approaching scientific or mathematical problems in their lives? And so there are a lot of things involved in being conversant in a topic, feeling comfortable talking with people about it, asking questions, understanding what a good answer is, and a kind of understanding that you could be successful in that career path if you wanted. It's not just for somebody else. A bunch of issues around helping people lead satisfying, productive, and rewarding lives that are beyond some of the narrow, measurable things. And I think we're going to have to work on those too, and that's going to evolve. And I think connecting people, giving them a chance to possibly practice being a nice person with AI. Could be or practice giving an interview before you go talk to a person in a way that's a little bit uncomfortable. There are a bunch of things like that I think will evolve as a result of technology too.
It's interesting because hearing you talk about what are we aiming for in education, up until now, there's been such a focus on you're learning your math, you're learning your science. If you're in an arts program, you're learning your arts. And I'm hearing from you not just learning how to answer multiplication problems, but also feeling confident in a mathematical situation where you're going to use this. But I'm also hearing some things like becoming a more resilient learner in person, a little bit more about metacognition, about kind of learning how we learn. Do you feel like that's kind of where the ball's going a bit?
Well, I mean, these two things are connected in a way. It doesn't help to tell someone to feel confident if they haven't practiced and developed some skills. But it also doesn't work to develop the skill and not understand that you're then ready to go into another kind of class, another kind of school, or do some kind of job or internship or volunteer work. So I think we understand in education that we need to help people develop as a whole person, and there are many parts of that.
So you'd mentioned a bit about being comfortable with using AI. Can you talk a little bit more about what that might look like from a learner's perspective? Because we talked a little bit about it from maybe a teacher or an adult's perspective, but what about the kids that are in K-12 right now? And how they might be able to work on becoming comfortable with using AI?
Well, I think there's one aspect of that, which is what could individuals do on their own? And then there's another kind of area of how could we use this in a school context? Can a teacher set up an assignment, a group project, an activity for the class that's also good? I think that, one easy thing to do is just, experiment yourself. So it's easy for anyone to have a conversation with an online AI chat bot and just understand that, sort of see what's possible and what isn't. There are a bunch of other kinds of, there's something called character.ai. You can go talk to a historical character. If you've always wanted to interview Albert Einstein or Susan B. Anthony, you can have that conversation, a fake version of that conversation, but it's an experiment that's a little more engaging in a way than simply talking to Chat GPT. There are a lot of things like that available to do, and then in addition to typing and words, there are a great many tools for producing images, pictures, short video, things like that. And I think one really important thing about the evolving landscape of AI is it enables new kinds of creativity. I'm not a great artist with a pen or with a paintbrush, but if I had an idea for an image, I can work with an AI tool or program to try to create that image and create a visualization of something I'm thinking about. So this technology is now opening up different kinds of creativity, avenues for creativity for people. And that's a great kind of fun thing to do in your time outside of school if you're a student or have time to look into it. anybody at any age can play with things and try to create things and have fun that way.
So how can K-12 STEAM schools best prepare students for this new future of work? Is there anything kind of from a practical sense to kind of give them a leg up? Because things can kind of feel overwhelming for a lot of schools right now.
Yeah. Well, I that's one of the issues in that is that none of us, things are changing so quickly that it's hard for any of us to feel like experts. And so if you're a teacher or you're helping teachers organize a plan, maybe one idea is to start with the fact that, to be honest, we don't know everything, but you could have a classroom activity in which you're trying to invent something together with students. So we've done this at the college level. I think you could do something very similar almost at any grade level. We've had a couple of design school courses on how can AI be useful for, learning different kinds of things. Some of the kind of things people have been interested in is, conflict resolution, or how to ask a helpful question in class, or things like that. So you could have a classroom activity where you say, all right, let's figure out, could AI be helpful in, writing essays or writing some kind of activity, and kind of invent with your students. So anyway, one category might be honest about the fact things are changing quickly, create some kind of classroom context that starts from that open kind of unknown sort of perspective and tries to investigate things, students and teachers together. I think that's one area. As we move forward, we will see more structured kinds of curricula around understanding an AI and its limitations. I think there's a very important category of topics to discuss about when is technology appropriate, what are the ethics of using it, can it be biased and unfair, how would we understand when that is. I think that's another part of education in an area with advancing technology, is to become aware of opportunities, but also pitfalls and things that we should all be careful about when we use technology.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to dig into something you said, kind of not only asking the question, could AI be helpful with something like writing essays, but actually having the class experiment with that together. And I know that's something that, at the D.school, that you really spend time with the students of, well, let's try it ourselves. Any kind of pointers for maybe a STEAM classroom where they're kind of not so used to that, of kind of taking the gloves off and like really experimenting in class on these things?
Yeah, I'm a little bit reluctant to advertise this one thing that we built, because if everybody listening here tries to use it, well, you'll probably overwhelm our system. But I'll describe it as an example. This was actually built originally by a high school student at the Stanford Online High School, this platform called Clara. And Clara is meant to help clarify your writing. But I like the format very much, and I'm sure there will be other things like this. You could probably use an AI edition provided by Google for the same purpose. The way Clara works is you invite Clara as an AI agent to be a collaborator when you're writing a Google Doc. And then Clara can comment on your writing, and you can comment back. Like, Clara, I don't believe that. I think it's a pretty good paragraph. Why are you being skeptical of my writing? You can have a dialogue with that. But I think that illustrates a format that could be used, which is to write in collaboration with AI. And then share with the class. The students could do different projects on it, kind of talk about what their experience was, and try to understand where it was helpful. I think that all of the main platform providers Google with Google Docs for writing or making slides or spreadsheets. Microsoft, Apple will have, now have and will have increasingly effective AI functionality you can interact with. So there'll be lots of ways for drawing that into the classroom. And I expect at any grade level, there will be teacher networks that will talk about these things and help develop tools. So that's another idea if you're a teacher is, talk to your peers, talk to other people in other school systems and try to connect and see what kind of experiments others are doing. I'm sure there's a great deal of good, creative, and productive thought in that direction.
Whenever I talk to K-12 teachers, one of the number one things that I hear is that they're overwhelmed in the classroom and they don't nearly have enough time to do what they want to do. The affordances of technologies like generative AI are so fascinating, but I feel like a lot of them are really fearful to having one other thing added to their plate. Any thoughts on how generative AI and other technologies could, instead of taking time away from them and adding more, might be able to kind of give them a little bit of time back, either during the classroom or outside of the classroom setting?
Right. I think it might take a little while for this to evolve in a way that we feel confident about using it. But one really tremendous opportunity is the ability for AI to help with grading. We've tried that. We have an annual 6-week free global introduction to computer science class. It's called Code in Place. And, we offer that in collaboration with 1,000 volunteer teachers. So everyone gets a kind of personal experience. It's not a broadcast video format entirely. It has a lot of human interaction. But it's also a way for us to try to experiment with tools and methods that we think might be promising. With 10,000 students, we get a lot of feedback. And one of the things that we've tried in the last run of this was automated grading of programs. And it seems to work pretty well. So I think based on that experience and other, experiments within people, the School of Education here, I think there's pretty strong indication that over time, AI will help with routine grading of assignments. If you give the AI model the rubric and student work, it can evaluate the student work with regard to that rubric. And additionally, there's the capability to summarize for the class how well students did, what were some of the problems, what are recurring things. I think if you could give every teacher back 5 or 10 hours a week of time that they spent grading, that would be a kind of a significant amount of time in someone's week. I think that's a very realistic goal in the next few years. It will have to evolve in a way because I think as we experiment, we'll be more confident in using this, and the result of experiment will help us evolve in a promising way. I don't think anyone wants to turn over their entire grading for the entire year to AI right now without checking it out. But I think over time, and not such a long period of time, we will find ways for particular kinds of subjects to leverage AI for some of the things that tie up teachers' time and hopefully free up time to be more creative. This is kind of in the category of AI as your assistant. What can you offload to your assistant? How can it give you more time to think? And I think that's coming for teachers. Another example that I like is from Sarah Levine, who is in the teacher education program at Stanford. She helps teach English teachers to teach English. And one of the things that is very useful in an English class at certain levels is to give students writing samples and ask them to critique them. Without AI, it's pretty cumbersome. It's a time-consuming thing to find good writing examples. But if you ask ChatGPT or Bard or one of these models, give me a paragraph about this subject that is written at a third grade level. You can get many, many samples out of that. And so that's an example of lesson preparation that can be simplified with AI. And I think there will be many other examples in different subject areas.
Interesting. You talked a couple of minutes ago kind of about the limits of AI and kind of thinking about when tech is appropriate, both inside and outside of the classroom. And I'm kind of thinking about a question from Damien at St. Patrick's School about how they've had some resistance from families of early ages, think of like kind of 6 and 7 years old, about how much time that they spend on screens. Any kind of thoughts around that, around kind of like screen time at that early of an age?
Yeah, I mean, my kids are a little bit older, and so I have crossed that problem a little bit, a couple decades ago, in fact. But I understand the point. I think we do live in a world with other humans and our children, other inhabitants of the planet. We'd like to see them be comfortable talking with humans face to face, and as parents. I think all of us enjoy hearing from our kids directly rather than looking at them over the shoulder as they spend time on a screen. So that's one perspective. I also remember my father telling me that his mother threw away all of his comic books once because he was spending too much time reading comic books. So before the screens, we had other distractions that kids got enmeshed in, and parents objected. So part of the dynamic is not really about the technology. It's a timeless sort of phenomenon. I don't have any guide really on that. I think there are many smart people who have thought about that. That maybe some time away from screen is a good thing, and you can try to help make that an opportunity rather than a punishment. I'm going to take away your screen. Like, maybe it's better to invite someone to go do something else. I don't have any deep thought on that, other than we don't all live entirely in a virtual world, and that's an important thing to acknowledge for all of us.
Thank you. So let's switch gears a little bit. Besides simply learning to use technology, how do you think that K-12 educators can help students develop a critical perspective on its role in shaping work and society?
I mean, I think there's maybe there can be explicit kind of studies of these things that can be a classroom unit or a topic area. Pick something. We did a few years ago in collaboration with the San Francisco Unified School District, a little bit of an introduction to AI for the high school level, I think, primarily. But the example we gave was music recommendations. So you can kind of think about how would you recommend music to somebody? How would you help them create a playlist? But then you could also kind of think about what are some of the things that you might miss by turning this over to AI. There's some other examples like face recognition. You could have a discussion about that, about what is face recognition used for at the airport or entry to some facility? Is it fair? What are the upsides and downsides of using that in various contexts? I think everyone will have to think about, and I'm sure there's good thought on what some of the topic examples like that are. But just the way we study, how government works, how different social processes work, as those evolve and leverage technology, we can also study, where is the technology in the process? Is that fair? What are the upsides and downsides?
So thinking about that, kind of the sense of what is fair and what is unfair, does this get back to your suggestion of kind of experimenting with these technologies in the classroom? Because you talked about kind of experimenting with them to learn to use them in the classroom, is there a space for experimentation in the classroom that's not just around using the technology, but around kind of gaining that better critical perspective and kind of a wider view on
Yeah,
it?
I'm sure there are many ways to do that. One thing that comes to mind is the way that AI is being used or could be used in screening job applications. I think many companies will start do this. You get a huge pile of resumes applying for a job. They'll have an automated screening process. That's a little bit abstract for someone who's in middle school, but maybe you could have another version of this, which is who's going to be on your sports team or who's going to be on your club to read a book together or something like that. And you could look at, what would what would AI tell you in this case? Run it as an example, have a discussion of whether you thought that was a good outcome or a bad outcome. What factors did it seem to rely on? Would you do something different as a person? If so, why? I mean, I'm just kind of making that up as an example off the top of my head, but I think, one of the things we do in education is try to find relevant analogs of larger social questions that help our students think through fundamental issues in a context that they understand. And I expect there are many ways to do that for larger questions about automation in our world.
Thank you for that. So one question we always ask of all of our guests is to kind of put your hopefully positive futurist hat on and think about, where do you see the future of education going?
So I'm an optimist, so I'm going to give you an optimistic future. But these are things I think are worth working towards and things that are important. I think since we're talking about AI and technology, I think we'll see new ways for kids and students of all ages to get tutoring-like experience automatically and learn things on themselves. I think we'll see a lot of new tools for teachers. This could lead also to, as I've mentioned, sort of better teacher communities on trying to develop new methods, lesson preparation. Some things we haven't really talked about. Assessment is a huge part of education. Assessment is not always measuring the most important factors that predict success. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for interactive assessment based on AI. I see that as really an interesting area. Longer term, I think two big trends that I'd like to see, and that I think advances in technology and the opportunity of change in education might enable. One is the notion of mastery learning. I think it's pretty well documented that if somebody studies one topic till they really feel comfortable about it, take whatever time that is, then they're much more able to go through subsequent material more effectively, more quickly, and more satisfyingly. So I think if we could move from here's your grade, now go on to the next one, to really help people take the time to master the topics, that would be a helpful trend. And there's ample educational research basis for that. And I think, even broader, in the future, competency-based credentials enable a lot of experimentation and would be really important. So if there's a way to say, you're at this certain level, you've reached this level of competency, and here where we believe in the assessment process, then that opens up lots of flexibility on how you get there. Different people can learn effectively in different ways. There can be innovation in educational process, as long as we have a way to measure or be understand that a certain level of proficiency has been reached. I'm a college teacher, so I tend to think of the college examples. most readily. But if you think of something like an MBA, a business degree, there's an awful lot of on-the-job experience that is comparable to some of the things that are taught in a business school program. So if we had a good way of giving someone an AI simulation of a work situation, letting them demonstrate that they know how to address the problem in practice, maybe we could let them spend the time, give them credit for that in effect, and let them spend their time in their business school program doing something else that was new to them. And there are versions of that at various school levels.
Thank you. We just have a minute or two for a quick question, but we have a good one from Meg at Brownell Talbot School. And Meg asks, one thing current research suggests is that AI will lead to significant job polarization, greatly reducing mid-skill jobs, but assisting or increasing wages for low-skill and high-skill jobs. With that in mind, should K-12 schools and universities pivot? And if so, how?
Boy, that's a complicated question. I think I'm not sure that I have a really good answer on it. Maybe the implication is, what skills will people benefit most from acquiring in their lives? And for that, I think that probably does make sense to try to track what we think the future is and try to enable our students to be proficient in the areas that will be relevant to them. It's very hard I think it takes a little more thinking to see what actual skills are going to be needed given that kind of broad characterization. What I have heard from most people I've asked is that it's important to understand fundamentals before you hand them over to AI. And so I think a lot of what we cover in school, will still be relevant, even if you're going to ask AI to do it for you later. It's useful to understand what the actual task is and what's involved. So it may be that in early stages for many different topics, we don't change too much or as much as we kind of look at later on what gets farmed off to AI and what do we do ourselves.
Thank you. Well, John, we've come to our available time today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us. I also want to again thank Digital Media Academy for sponsoring this series. You can find out more about the leading STEAM schools in the world membership program on the website at digitalmediaacademy.org/schools and the Global Innovation Race at digitalmediaacademy.org/GIR, or contact us anytime at info@digitalmediaacademy.org. On behalf of Digital Media Academy, I want to thank everyone who was able to join us today for this session, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, Chris, and great to have all of you with us.
Take care.